Hi guys, it's only 6:22, so I'm just going to hang out here for a little bit and I'll start around 6:30, just in case we get little stragglers along the way. If you need to chat, you can put the chat in the box there over in the comment. I am watching that while I'm here sitting here anyway. So hi guys, it's me. I started early because I just wanted to make sure that all this was set up before I got started. So today I'm using this StreamYard. I saw Ian use it once before on one of his videos, so I tried it out and it is a lot easier to use than Facebook. With this, I'm able to actually see, I can't see anybody, which is unfortunate, but you can see me while we're actually doing the presentation. So it's a little bit better, and I can see your comments come up here on the side. So if you have a comment, you can just pop it there. So I do think you can talk to me, I think. If you can, feel free to jump in whenever you want. This is going to be a fun session simply because we're going to talk about frames. We're going to look at some frames. We're going to about swarming, queens. So it is jam-packed, and I can't wait. So I'm pretty darn excited. It's 6:29. I know Slade Cooper's online. So I said I was going to wait for him. 6:29. So I think I'm going to start. So guys, I don't know who was there last week. So last week it was more biology. We talked about the life cycle of the bee. We talked about what's in the hive, whether it be worker, queen, or drone. We talked about the roles that the worker has. So that was more biology. I enjoy that stuff, but it's a little bit dry for anybody who really doesn't. So I'm going to jump in and talk about all the exciting stuff today. So you're going to learn about the smoker. So hang tight. Here we go. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about the hive equipment and the different tools. And there's so many that you could look at when you start beekeeping or when you are beekeeping. And I think the big thing there is you have to make sure that you get quality stuff. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the big list. We're going to talk about the sounds of the hive. The smoker, which is the most important tool for a beekeeper to have. We're time for a hive check. So this is a little bit different in that I believe that you can do a outside hive check. And that's basically looking at the hive and seeing what the activity is. And you can tell a lot just by looking at what's going in and out of the entrance, the sound, the smells. You can tell a lot by just doing that. You don't even have to lift your cover. But we are going to talk about reading the frame. So we are going to get into the hive. I'm going to pull out some frames and have a read and see what they're all about. We're going to talk about some queen issues. And we're going to talk about swarm cells and supersedure cells. And they're in different places on a frame. We're going to talk about how to combine hives. And we're going to talk about swarms. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. So let's dive into the appropriate hive equipment. And if you're a new beekeeper, it can be a little bit overwhelming because you think or you hear about all the stuff you have to buy. And I would just suggest, you know what, get the bare right now, bare minimum. And then when you get the hang of it and you get your likes and dislikes, you can kind of expand your equipment and your boxes and all that stuff. So first, we're going to talk about suits. So I am a big fan of suits. I don't think beekeepers need to be superheroes. I think we can wear suits and protect ourselves. If a honeybee stings you in the eye, there's a possibility that you will go blind. If you get stung a heck of a lot, you could end up in a merge. So it's not fun. When they sting you, and I'm sure people have been stung, when they sting you, it hurts. So I have a tattoo, and you know what? It stings more than actual a tattoo needle going in. So wear your suits. Another important thing here I want to just mention, make sure you get a good quality suit. I'm not talking about going out and buy a $300 sting stopper suit, which I want, but I am talking about a quality suit. So I do know of some beekeepers or beekeeping companies that are selling pretty junky suits. These suits are coming from China. These suits are not going to protect you from bees. So I would just suggest make sure you get a good one. And I'm not kind of giving Amazon any credit here. They're not paying me or anything, but there are some pretty good prices on Humblebee suits on Amazon. So just have a look at those, and they're really good. So yeah, so make sure you get the proper suit. Some people like to wear a full suit. I usually do, and some people just like the jacket. You also need if, for example, you're going up and you just check in to see if your hive needs more sugar syrup, okay, you can go up and just lift the top. You're not getting into the body of the hive. You're just lifting the top cover and you're having a look and just seeing if they need any more sugar syrup. So it is okay to wear that at that time. Gloves, another important thing. These are my favorite. I bought these at Man Lake. I love them. I need to get another pair. I'm not cool. I used to wear the leather gloves. The difference with the leather is that they soak up all the honey. They soak up all the sugar syrup. They get hard and you can't kind of really feel your frame really well. So I like them, but I don't like them. I like them when they're clean and when they're new. But when they start to get older, it gets a little bit difficult using them. So I really like these. They protect you against like water and honey. You can wash them off easy. The bees do not sting you through this, and they have big long sleeves that it comes right up tight, so to prevent your arms from getting stung. So these are great. They also use these nitro gloves. You can get these. The bees don't like to land on them, so they probably won't sting you with those on. But again, if they do sting you, they're not really puncture proof, so they're going to get through that. Big important thing were socks. So I learned that the hard way. Only last year, actually. I was going to the farmer's market. I had to go up and get a hive and put it in my observational hive. I was bringing it down to the farmer's market. And I just thought this was going to be a quick thing. So I went up, and lo and behold, I didn't have socks on. I had Crocs on. And the hive was a little bit spicy because it wasn't really warm. So I got stung on my ankles. And I tell you, after 8 hours standing on cement floor, I couldn't walk at the end of the day. Socks are important. So just give you a heads up on that. Your hive tool. Now, hive tools come in many different sizes and shapes. When I was at the Bee Expo, my friend Mike bought me a new hive tool, and it's a super long one. It's almost like the ones they had with the bush bee man in Australia. It's awesome, good for cutouts. So this is a good hive tool as well, but it's not really long. The longer it is, you won't lose it. The bee brush, it is popular, especially if you're trying to clear bees off your frame. Just a heads up, bees don't like bee brushes, to be honest with you. They get a little bit agitated when you use a bee brush on them. I try not to use the bee brush. Usually if I have to see in a frame, I'll just blow on them a little bit and they'll clear away so I can actually see what's on the frame. The smoker is your most important tool for beekeeping. It's different chambers. This is a billow. So this is what pumps the oxygen in here. It gets your fire started, gives it up here, your fire chamber, and this is your nozzle. We're going to go into that a lot more in just a little bit. So this is your most important tool. So this here, yes, it's a hive, but what I want you to focus on right now is actually the feeding of it. So this is just a plain bucket. You can get them a little bit fancy in that you can get like little inserts here. You can cut it out and push them in there, and it's more like filters so that the sugar syrup don't exit really quickly. So the bees just have to come up, and as soon as they touch that, sugar syrup is going to come down and it's going to give them a little bit of a drink, but yet it's not going to drip down in the hive. So this is when you're actually feeding sugar syrup. It's really important, in my opinion, to have it all together in the hive, have it isolated so that that's going to prevent robbers from coming into your hive. And even if it's from another hive, if they sense that a hive is particularly weak, there's a high chance they're going to start robbing that hive. So that's why it's important to kind of get everything inside. This is another feeder. You don't have to rush out and buy one of these right away. This is like a fancy one. I used to have one similar to that. Can't say I was a fan. I think they're after improving them, but I found that a lot of my bees actually got out and drowned. I think last week I mentioned bees love water to drink because they use it for air conditioning. They use it for the honey production. However, they're horrible around water. So I talked about the oxygen, the little spiracles being on their back. That's where the oxygen goes in. It's really easy for them to drown. A drop of water can just drop on them and it gets into the spiracles, and obviously they're not feeling that great then. So yes, that's why I don't like this one. This is another one. And again, this one again, I don't mean to be a negative Nelly, but I don't really like that one either. I lost a lot of bees with this kind of feeder. So this is called a frame feeder. So this goes directly into your hive. You have to take out maybe 2 frames in order to fit that in your hive. And bees just get in this frame feeder and they just climb down this right here and they get the sugar syrup. Now, I really tried to put a lot of different things there. I put sticks in there, I put marbles in there, and I still found dead bees. So not a fan. And this is a simple frame feeder. I think this is cute. If it's not like August or September, I would use these. Like these are really good if you want your bees to have a snack really quickly. You just put it into the hive entrance and the bees can just kind of go out and they can take the sugar syrup from the top pretty easy. So I am a fan of these. Markers. So every year, depending on the year, the queen is marked a different color. Now, not everybody needs to mark your queen. It's totally up to you. I don't really mark mine. The queen really stands out, so I really don't need a marker to show me where she is. And I'm not selling any nukes to kind of let the person be aware of what year the queen was born. So I don't usually mark my queens, but if you do, these are the markers that you need. And this year, the color is blue. So if you are a newer beekeeper, if your queen was born this year, it'll be blue. That's a queen cage. That's really important if you need to catch your queen for whatever reason, whether you want to transport her, whether you want to just put her in protection if you're doing a really extensive hive check. You use the queen cage. I'm not a real big fan of queen cages. I'm a little bit protective over my queen. When I see the queen, I respect the queen, and I really don't want to mangle her or touch her. I just want her to run free. When you think about it, the queen is so important. Her abdomen is filled with so many eggs. I wouldn't want to damage her in any way. So I just let her go, and I kind of work around the queen. This is a queen clip. This is really good to use if you're trying to introduce a queen into your hive. So if your hive for some reason becomes queenless and you need to introduce a queen, some people use these queen clips and other people use these little plastic things. It all depends. So queen clips are good. And like, oh, when I'm doing hive cutouts or if I'm doing swarms, it's really important to have a clip with you so that if you see your queen, you can kind of snag her really quickly. And that will speed up the whole process of swarming, because as soon as the bees get a whiff of that queen, if you put it in the hive, all the bees are just going to march in. So your job has gotten a lot easier if you can find the queen. So that's what the queen clip is for. Ratchet straps. Huge, important fan of ratchet straps. I don't know if you can see those. Ratchet straps. You need ratchet straps around your hives. I'm after everybody for this, simply because it keeps your hive together. So if you're in bear country and a bear comes and tries to tip over your hive for honey or for pupae or for larvae, at least you have a chance of your hive staying together. It'll probably be tipped over, but it will all stay together in the different boxes. Wind, another big thing here in Newfoundland. We always have to worry about wind. So ratchet straps are easy. And you know what? This is sad, but it does happen. When you think about vandalism and you think about people just being, I say bad, wanting to tip over your hives. And again, if they tip it over, at least your boxes are together. So that's the main one that you need. So this is what I talked about. You can observe what's going on in your hive just by standing outside. Not a lot of people think of this way. When my professor kind of suggested, Raylene, just look. You look at everything you see and you can kind of determine what's going on in your hive. I really believe it. So the first thing I want you to do is look at the bee traffic. So if you're doing a hive check, or else you're just sitting up like me, sitting up by your hive, just watching bees go in and out, you can observe. So just observe the amount of bees going in and out of the entrance. So it's a steady traffic. It kind of tells me it's a healthy colony. If they're just gracefully going in and out and being active, that's a sign of a good colony. Obviously, if there's little or no activity, we get concerned. When you think about it, a normal hive has about 30,000 bees. you're going to have bees going in and out of that entrance at a steady rate. Frantic activity, that's something else you need to be worried about. So if you're sitting on by your hive and you see bees going in and out, and you also see bees around the hive trying to get in every little nook and cranny, that's a sign of robbing. So if you see that, it means you need to bar up your entrances because your hive might be robbed out. So this is 3 things that we can tell just by sitting by the hive. Pollen collection. If you see bees going in and out of your hive with pollen pockets on, that's telling you that 1, they're bringing in pollen, so they're bringing in resources for bee bread. 2, that's pollen is protein. So as they're starting to bring in pollen, that's telling me that the queen is going to get motivated to lay. Protein makes the queen lay or encourages her to lay. So we see pollen going in the hive, that's a good sign. So another activity that you might see at the hive that you really need to keep an eye out for. So if you see a bunch of bees like down here by the hive, and they're probably facing the entrance of the hive, they're flapping their wings, they're not going off, they're just staying there, they're fanning. So that's telling me that it's too warm in the hive. So what happens is that they get at the entrance, they probably spit little drops of water while they're fanning, and that actually makes like an air conditioning mist go throughout the hive. So that tells me, you know what, it's too hot in the hive. So that's what they're doing. Guard bees, they're nasty. But you know what, guard bees don't really bother the beekeeper at all until it's like August or September. The reason why they're worst in August and September is simply because they're protecting their hive. So they are in resource mode. They want to protect their resources. If they feel that somebody's coming close to their hive or it's a threat to them, their guard bee is going to come out and it's going to give you a bop on the head usually and kind of tell you to stay away. Guard bees are also really good at protecting the hive in that if another bee comes to the entrance and they don't smell like the regular hive, they'll kind of assess the situation. If that bee has resources, they might let the bee in. However, if not, very likely they're just going to chase the bee off and fight with it and not let it in its colony. Oh, this is yucky. I don't like this one. So dead honeybees at the hive, supposed to be bees at the hive. So if you see a few dead bees, that's okay. Just like in the wintertime when I go up in my shed, or if people have their hives outside, if you see a few dead bees at the entrance, that's totally fine. That's normal. What you're seeing is probably summer bees just dying off. So summer bees only live 6 weeks. Winter bees live 6 months. And they're just made up differently in order to live that long. However, if you see a pile of dead bees, that's when you need to be worried because it means a death of a colony. So they either could be starved or they could be exposed to pesticides. And that's really horrible when you see, I'm not sure if you can see this picture. Usually when it's pesticides, you always see your bees with their tongue out. I don't like looking at that, but it does happen, unfortunately, sometimes. Or they could have passed away because of extreme cold. This is my favorite gland, actually. The favorite gland is a Nasonov gland, and you can see it really good here. It's a little strip that goes across the bee, and what happens is that the bee sticks its bum right up in the air, flaps his wings a lot, and that pheromone goes out towards, the environment. It goes in the hive. Basically, what they do is for when bees are lost. So if bees are kind of disoriented or they're not finding their way back into the hive, the worker bees will go out into the entrance. They'll do this pose. They'll send off some of their Nasonov gland, and they'll actually let the bees on their way home. You also see this when your queen is out mating. So if your queen has gone on her mating flight, and you kind of know when that is, just because you know what we talked about last time in regards to the time scale for everything. So if she's time to go out, a good hint is that when you go up to your hive and you see all these bees at the entrance and they're fanning and they've got their bum stuck up in the air, it's very likely they're fanning for the queen and giving her direction of how to find her way back to the hive. So you might also see that on your hive as an outside check. And that's about the queen. Oh, and another thing, they also will do the Nasonov gland up in the air when their hive is moved. So when you have to move your hive, you should move it little by little. You don't need to take it like from here right up into the next meadow or the next garden. You have to kind of move it slowly to give the bees a chance to orientate, give the bees a chance to recognize where home is. Once you actually get to that position, you're going to see a lot of these worker bees out on the entrance. They're going to have their bum stuck up, and that's an off gland going off. And that's basically, again, to help the bees that aren't orientated to where their new home is, to help them find their way home. Orientation flights are really cool. You are going to see those in front of your hive. So orientation flights are different than when bees are lost. So orientation flights is basically baby bees. And right shortly after they're hatched, or they kind of go out of their cell, what happens is they go outside. When they go outside, they just do a circular motion outside of the hive. And basically, they're just orientating themselves to where the hive is. They're getting their landmarks. They're looking at what color the hive is. They're looking at trees. So they're just taking inventory of all that so that they have a better idea when it gets to their time of being a forager. Well, they know what the orientation is like within their meadow or wherever their hive is. So I actually have a video of this. So this is really cool. So I could sit all day and watch this in my apiary. I have a chair right next to all my hives, and I just watch this all day. So this is orientation flight. So as you can see, they're just going around in circles. They're just kind of testing the air, and they're kind of looking at what's around. And that's very common to see, especially after new bees have hatched. Again, when you are looking at your hive from the outside, this is good to see because it tells me, one, that there's after being some new bees hatching, and two, it's a very normal thing for bees to kind of do the orientation flight after they hatch. So that's good. We want to see that. The other one here, and this is what you will see, this is basically bringing in pollen. Again, that's telling us that the hive is healthy. They're bringing in protein. There's one here, there's one there. There's one there. You can see it on the back of their legs. So when, and I'm sure some people do have their hives, but when you do get your hive, you're going to want a really good, comfy, cozy chair to sit in the middle of your apiary so you can watch all this. So if I'm having a yucky day at work, I go up and I sit by my apiary, and this is what I see. So it's pretty relaxing. So again, you see pollen going in. We know the queen is probably laying, and one, because of pollen, and that's protein, and also because they're bringing pollen in for bee bread. That's what they feed the young. So let's go on to the next one. So this here, this is pretty darn scary. So when you actually have to witness this, it's so scary. So it's basically bee robbing. So honeybees are obviously very smart little creatures, and they can kind of pick up on if a hive is weak or if the hive is struggling to survive. And if they pick up on that, they will go into that colony and try to steal all the resources. And it's pretty violent. I'll just show you this, and I'll just talk about it after. So signs of robbing is increased aggression. So you're going to see a lot of bees going in and out. They're going to go to all the little nooks and crannies. They're going to try to get in there. You're going to hear a lot of noise. You're going to hear a lot of buzzing. You're going to see a lot of dead bees by the entrance. And again, that's because they're injured from the robbers coming in. You're going to see a lot of torn off cappings, and that would be like at the entrance of your hive, and a lot of aggressive defensive behavior. Again, bees stocking. So this is it here, guys. I don't like this, but here we go.
This hive is being robbed. Invading bees attack the hive, and it is often a fight to the death. This most commonly happens during a nectar shortage or at dearth, when the surrounding honeybees are forced to look elsewhere for food.
So that's pretty darn scary. I don't like it. I haven't really, thank gosh, witnessed that. So most of my colonies, I try to keep up. If I think a colony is actually starting to get weak, I'll probably put some bees in there. I'll put a famous brood from another hive just to kind of liven it up and let it a little bit more active. So, but yeah, I don't like robbing. So these are just some pictures that I just wanted. I just thought that these were a little bit interesting. So remember what I said about bees having to go to the entrance and fan. That's what these bees are doing here. So they're fanning because the hive is warm. So what happens is that they fan again, they drop little spits of water out, they bring that into hive, cool everything down. The bees' biggest worry is that they're going to harm their brood. So the honeybees know, worker bees know what temperature it needs to be in the hive, and they know if it's too hot, the brood will pass away or die. So also what bees do when it's really hot in the hive, this is bearding right here. So they'll actually come out of the hive. A lot of people get scared when they see that because they think it's swarming, but it's not swarming, it's bearding. So the less amount of bees in the hive, the less warm it's going to be. So that's why they exit into the front of the hive and create this beard. This is my favorite. This is an Asimov gland, as you can see it right here. And that's what they use to bring bees home. If a bee, is out and disoriented, it smells an Asimov gland, and it's like a map to get home. Again, this is when they're fanning. So as you can see, the difference in stance, right? So the Asimov gland, they're sticking it right up, and that exposes an Asimov gland. And this is fanning. They're just standing there. Their bum's not stuck up. They're just pretty relaxed, and they're just flapping their wings. So this is a guard bee. Again, guard bees are usually really, their busy starts in probably August. And again, because they're on guard for anybody or any insect coming in and stealing their resources. So they're totally on guard. Guard bees are funny. I love watching them. Again, this is all the pollen that you see going in, and this pollen is bright yellow. So that makes it a lot easier to kind of see it coming in. Just an idea on the pollen is that pollen can be a whole lot of different colors. When you see a frame that has all pollen or bee bright in it, it's the most beautiful thing ever. It's so many colors. So pollen color changes depending on the flower that the bee has been involved with. So it all depends on that, just like honey. It all depends on what the bee has been involved in. And this is signs of an overpopulated colony. So this is not good. When you start seeing this, either one, you need to make a split, or two, you need to add a box. So you don't want your bees to be overcrowded because that's when they swarm. So this is the different sounds that you're going to get around the hive. Okay, so the general is just a low, steady hum or buzz. It's just like background noise. It's not a defensive buzz. And when you've been in the apiary for quite some time, you will hear the difference. You're also going to hear when they're fanning their wings, and you just hear them on the frame. So that's just a real friendly buzz. I'll just pause this and show you. Oh, sorry, guys. Unfortunately, I can't get rid of the commercials. Here we go. So that's a normal hive. As you can see, it's not aggressive at all. It's just very natural. It's relaxing. And you can sit by your hive when the bees are flapping like that, and they're not going to bother you. They're not going to go at you at all. They might land on you, but that's about it. So this is a normal hive. I love watching them. Okay, let me pause this. Fanning, again, it feels like all I'm doing is talk about fanning, but again, you are going to get a little bit of sound when they're actually doing that, and I explained what that was in regards to cooling down the hive. The hive, even in the winter time, the honeybees can maintain the temperature about 37 degrees all through the winter, and they do that by shaking. But yeah, even in the summer, they have to regulate the temperature as well because they don't want it to get too hot for their brood to cook. So they have to maintain the temperature. Now, the alarm buzz. So this is what you're going to hear right now. You'll see the difference of that as opposed to a normal sound. And it's quite different. I'll let you hear.
Sometimes you've got to go out there and inspect the bees, even when they're a little bit grumpy. Overcast here today, it's drizzly, but it's heather season. We cannot risk these bees swarming. We have to get in there, check the swarm cells. I don't think they're very happy with me today, so I'm going to go away and leave them to it. Got some grumpy grumpy.
And they are. And you know what? I totally agree. I wouldn't have even got that far if I were him. So when you go to your hive and you start feeling that they're grumpy or they're, I call it spicy, they start bopping you on the head, that's the time, you know what? It's not the time to do a hive check. It's probably too cold or they're just in a rotten mood and you just come back the next day. It's not a huge deal. I'd rather do that than really make them upset, and you're not going to enjoy your hive check if that's the way things are. Oh, sorry, guys. Okay, these are more bee sounds. Silence. Obviously, you know what? When we hear a silent hive, it's definitely something that we don't want to hear. Silence usually means that it's a dead colony. So basically, you have to check it right away. Knock on the side. You should hear something. Even in the winter months, this time of year, it's so difficult to hear your hive. I have a stethoscope that I bring up and I put that on the hive and I can hear them. But my bees are so loud, I can just hear them when I walk into my shed. But if it's silent, that's to be concerned. Now, swarms. I love swarms. I don't like how they are made or what happens to them, but I just love them. And they are chaotic, they're loud, they're exciting. When you're actually experiencing a swarm, like it's something you'll never, ever experience again. And you know what? As a beekeeper, I think you're quite lucky. John Campbell, a good friend of mine out in Deer Lake, he is a swarm king. He's had some really cool videos of being involved in a swarm, but I'll just let you hear. So this is what a swarm sounds like when it's around the hive. Crazy. As you can see, very chaotic, fast. They are getting ready to go. So that's a swarm. Okay. So again, you'll see, and again, this is just go back to my first point in that, you know what, this is all stuff that you can kind of look at and evaluate and observe, not even going into the hive. These are things that you can look at and it tells you a heck of a lot. Another thing, and I don't think I mentioned it, is smell. So when you go up to your hive and it smells awful, that's telling you a lot. So one, if you've ever smelled dead bees, you will never get the smell out of your nose, ever, whether it's outside or inside. I lost some hives last year because of a rat. I went up to do some cleaning, and I tell you, it's horrible. So one, you're going to smell that if you go up around, and that's an outside check. Another thing too, and now we don't have to worry about that here in Newfoundland, whether it's American foul brood, it smells really, really yucky, and you'll know exactly that something's going on. And in the summer, you're going to smell honey. So obviously that's a good smell, and you realize at that point that it's a healthy colony. So not a lot of people are aware of this, or not a lot of people have heard it, because you're very special if you do, because the queen doesn't do it all the time. So the queen actually does sounds as well. So I've heard this. If I'm sitting in my apiary, you can hear the queen do it. You don't have to be in the hive. You can just sit by the hive and you can hear this. So they toot and they pipe. That's two of the sounds that they make. And again, beekeepers use different words. That's the ones that I use. Tooting is basically, that's when a queen comes out of her cell. So she's a brand new queen. She's a virgin queen. She comes out of that cell. She's going to march around that frame and she's going to toot. And that toot is basically telling the other queens, even the ones in their cell still, I'm here, I'm ready to fight. So that's what the tooting means. So usually what happens, if you hear the toot, you're going to hear a pipe. So that comes from the ones that are still in their cell. So it's pretty cool that they can hear that through the cell. So what happens is that usually the queen answers them back in that cell and they do a piping noise. They do that for two reasons. One, they do it because they're going to tell all the workers, bees in the hive, like, I'm here, I'm coming out, hang out with me. And they're also telling the queen that's going around tooting that I'm on my way and I'm going to be fighting with you. So that's pretty darn cool when you hear that. And I know we talked about the queen and the people, the bees in the hive, and there's only ever one queen in the hive. I have heard from two, but that's very, very rare. I've never had it. So this is the queen piping and tooting. Let's see if you can hear it. Very cool. So that's pretty darn cool when you hear that in your apiary. And I've heard that, and I know Nancy Squires have heard it as well. It's a pretty good feeling. So that's something else that you can pick up while it's just sitting by your hive. So now we are going to move into the smoker. And again, I mentioned this when we first started. The smoker is the most important tool that a beekeeper will have. I used to use my smoker a heck of a lot. However, lately I have been finding I haven't used it a lot simply because I find my bees super friendly. So I usually don't light up my smoker. If I had to, I would, but it's not something that I do on a regular basis. So the smoker is a critical tool, and what it does is that it calms your bees. So what does a smoker do? It calms the bees. So when the bees get a stint or a feeling of that smoke, they're automatically going to think fire. So what happens is that they run to the honey frames and they chow down on so much honey, as they can get. So while they're doing that, it's the beekeeper's job to kind of get in and do a hive check while the bees are totally occupied with the honey. The reason why the bees go to the honey, like I said, they think it's a fire and they don't know when their next meal is going to be. So they have to gouge and make sure they have enough food to last them. So that's one thing that it does. It also masks the alarm pheromone. So the land pheromone is in the Kosinov gland of the honeybee. It smells like rotten bananas. So when a beekeeper goes into the hive, the worker bees might not like that at all. So it might get a little bit spicy, as I call it. So they start to release their alarm pheromone. They may sting you on the glove. They may bop you on the head. And when you use your smoker, that masks all that. So the other bees don't pick up on the alarm pheromone that their worker bees are putting off. So it hides the pheromone and kind of lets you sneaky get into the hive and do a hive check. And again, they go after the honey and they just gouge themselves if they don't know when their next meal will be. So how do you light your hive? Your smoker. The smoker is probably, as a new beekeeper, can be pretty challenging. One, to get lit, and two, to keep it lit. I found it challenging when I first started off, but after a while, when you know the different things that you can use, it helps out tremendously. So let's see here. So to start the smoker, it's almost like Boy Scouts. I remember my brother telling me this, that they learned how to do a fire and that a teepee. It's similar to that. So you put burlap or pine needles or wood chips and cardboard. You put that at the bottom. You make like a little teepee form of it. Then you get some grass or some more cardboard. You put it on top, and then you light it. So when you light it, you have to keep pushing in on the bellows. Keep pushing in for the air. Wait for the smoke to kind of come up the fire to come up over the smoker, close your top, and keep pumping it. So what you're looking for is a white smoke. White smoke because it's cool smoke. That's what we're looking for. We don't want to burn our bees when we're actually doing a hive check. So that's the kind of smoke that we're looking for. You might have to keep adding. I bought a huge bag of wood shavings off this lumber yard, and it's fabulous. It's lasted me. This is the second year I've had it. So just a piece of advice, I find that really good. As you can see here, this white smoke, that's what we're after. And you get that by grass, or you can get it by straw, anything really. But the big thing is you have to keep it going. So you have to really keep checking it, putting in some more shavings or grass, whatever works for you. Another big thing too, you have to remember your smoker is hot. The bottom of that gets so hot. So I want you to be mindful of where you're putting it. So you know what, I've heard of beekeepers put it on the grass, and this grass is pretty green. If you put that on the grass in a really hot place, and it's highly likely that it's probably going to catch a fire, especially if it's dead grass. So you just have to be mindful of where you're putting your smoker. Another thing I want you to kind of be mindful of is, a lot of people put their smoker on top of their hive. You might not bother with this, but it kind of bugs me. I don't want like a hole mark in the top of my hive box. So just to be mindful of that, because it will burn. So use a metal stand or a metal surface if possible. In my apiary, I have cement blocks, so I just put it on the cement blocks and I'm not having to worry about it then. And again, you have to make sure that you put it out when you're finished, and you can put it in a safe space after that. So this is my buddy, Cayman. I met him back 2 years ago in Calgary. We became good friends and met him again. We chat back and forth and talked to him again at the Bee Expo. He's a wonderful man. So just wanted to show you this. He's really good at this, so I'll let him do the job. And it's a commercial.
Hi everyone,
Oh no!
Cameron Reynolds here. And today I'm going to show you how to get your smoker lit in 60 seconds in such a way that it's going to last all day as long as you get the fuel. So what you need is a piece of chicken feed sack or some type of paper material. Get it lit and wait till it comes out the top. We got to get a certain degree of heat before we can really get this thing going.
You wait for the fire to come up. See?
All right, start to get some flames coming out the top. All right, we got more flames. Now we can add a little bit more.
He makes it look easy.
Keep her going. That's the cool smoke that we need. That's not going to get sparks on the bees or start a forest fire. Because only you can prevent them. All right, that's almost.
Look at that smoke. That's what you need when you do a hive inspection.
And that right there is going to last you all day. Some nice, cool smoke. And your bees are going to be happy and pretty quick.
And there you go.
Thanks for watching.
He makes it look a little bit easy, guys, but as a new beekeeper, you'll probably struggle with that for a little bit, but it'll come easy afterwards. So now we're going to take a little step into the frame. So I tried to get as many good frames as I could to give you a good idea of what it looks like when you get into your apiary and you start pulling frames. What are you looking for? Why are you doing a hive check? So we're going to go through all that, and I hope I picked some good frames for you to see. So hive check day, my favorite day. I usually do hive checks on Saturdays simply because I work through the week. My Saturday mornings are usually observed for my bee day. So I love it. Usually you wait until midday, like lunchtime. So around 12 o'clock usually is when I go up, 1 o'clock. And by waiting that little bit, you're actually ensuring that the forager bees are out. So there's not as many bees in the hive. So that's why you're kind of going for a little later in the day as opposed to 9 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, and you also have to be mindful of the temperature. So honeybees don't really like it outside if it's below 15, unless you're a Newfoundland honeybee and you can go out flying at 3 degrees. But yeah, so 15 degrees is usually the temperature that the honeybees like to go out and fly. So you want to make sure that it's above 15. You don't want it a cloudy day. You don't want a misty rain. You don't want fog, because that's going to really tick them off. So you have to have a nice day. And again, the time of the day is really important. And the purpose. So why do we do a hive inspection? Many reasons. We do a hive inspection because we're looking for brood. We want to make sure that the queen is laying. We're looking for eggs, larvae, and pupae. We're looking at the honey stores. Make sure that they actually have enough resources. We're also looking for pollen bread, for bee bread, which is made of pollen, to make sure that the bees have something to eat, the baby bees. We're also looking for pests and diseases. And the big thing, again, we're looking for the queen, to make sure we have a healthy queen. So those are the things that you're kind of looking for when you do your hive check. So this is actually the steps. You have to forgive me. I'm going to try to do a visual here. So the first thing you do, you lift off the top. I always lift the top away from me. So I'll put my hands right here and I'll lift it up away from me. only because if you lift it up towards your face, if the bees are spicy, they're going to kind of go in your face. Now, again, that doesn't really matter if you have a bee suit on, I guess, but it's just, that's what I've gotten into. And again, everybody's different. So when you go up to your hive, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put a little puff of smoke in the entrance, basically telling the bees, you know what, I'm coming in. And then you take off your top, you put a puff of smoke on the top. And that again is going to mask the alarm pheromone. It's going to make the bees, okay, it's a fire, we have to go eat honey. So they're going to get preoccupied. So hopefully the aim is that they're not even going to know you're in the hive. And again, if it's a double box like this, I usually put my hive cover on the ground and I put this second box. You always start with the bottom. So take the second box, you put it on your hive cover, and you know then that your queen, if she's up on the top, she's safe. She can't get out. She's in that box with the hive cover underneath it. And then you start with the bottom box and you work your way up with the boxes. Move the outer cover, the inner cover. Again, another thing I want to mention, when you actually do this with the inner cover, you always have to look underneath. There has been times where your queen can get underneath the inner cover. It's rare, but it does happen. And the last thing you want to do is to lose your queen. So always make sure your queen is not on the inner cover when you take it off. Okay, you start with the outer frames and you work your way in. So basically you take out the first frame and you put that on side, put that like on the ground if you want, or on another hive box just to keep it safe. And then you start from the second and you keep pulling them up. So this is a really good indication right here. So it's kind of like what you're supposed to do. And you start from the outsides and you work your way in. So this is what this lady's doing. Again, you're looking at the outer frames. That's where more your honey is going to be, your pollen's going to be. You're going to, in the middle of the frame, and we talked about this last week, say, for example, right here, that's where the brood is. So as you move in closer, you're going to get to the brood nest. When you start moving into the brood nest, you have to be looking for eggs. You're looking for larvae to make sure they're healthy. You're looking for cap brood to make sure none of the cappings are off. Again, you're all looking at this, and this will tell you if the hive are healthy or not. And you're looking for the queen. So amongst all that, while you're doing that, from the very beginning, you're always mindful of where your queen is. Is sort of thing like rolling your queen. You don't want to do that. And that's basically rolling a frame on her and it will kill her. So always check to where your queen is. I hate it. I just have to show you this. I really don't like this. If we do another session next week, I'm going to talk about different diseases. And this here is a varroa mite. I don't like that. I don't like looking at them sick. Bit weird. But yeah, when you do a hive check, you also have to look for pests and diseases. Pests would be varroa mites, wax moth, chalk brood, foul brood, hive beetle is horrible, nosema tropy, which is a new one coming out. And what I want to say here is that in Newfoundland, we don't have to worry about most of these. We only usually sometimes get nosema. However, outside of Newfoundland, yes, you have to worry about varroa, wax moth, chalk brood, and hive beetle. And there's different treatment options for that. And like I said, I can go into that next week. If people are interested in having another session, I could certainly do that. But yeah, so when you're doing your hive check, you are looking for all these pests and these diseases. Wow, just look at that hive. So you're also looking at, when you do a hive check, you're also looking at the strength of your hive, the numbers in your hive. When I look at that box, I'm thinking, holy cow, we need to either split that box and make a little nuke out of it, or we need to add another box. So that's what first comes to mind when I see this here. So again, during your hive check, you're looking for that. And if you see overcrowdedness, you have to make that decision, whether or not you're going to make a split or you're going to add another box. I'll get into swarming in a little bit, but in order for your bees not to swarm, those are the real two things that you really need to keep in mind when you do see that your hive is overcrowded. If you leave this hive just the way it is, 90% chance, 98% chance they are going to swarm. So beekeepers have to be a step ahead. That's why we do hive checks every week. in order to keep ahead of the bees in regards to how crowded they get. Checking for signs of swarming. This is your first sign, see an overcrowded hive. The second sign would be, not a lot of beekeepers think a lot of these, the queen cups. I think they tell you something. So basically, worker bees make these little queen cups, for testing, or they're practicing how to make a queen cell. That's what you're told usually. In my experience, where there's smoke, there's fire. Talking about a smoker, but I think, in my opinion, I feel that they mean something. So I'm always very mindful of when I see that and kind of looking at my queen, looking for swarm cells. The worker bees also make these little cups thinking that the queen is going to actually lay an egg in there. And this is actually a swarm cell. So if you start seeing swarm cells at the bottom of your frame, like you need to do something, you need to make a split. I wouldn't even put a box on, I'd make a split, or you can take those cells off. And I had a video on just a little while ago, cut them off, place them into another box, and they will have another queen, and bam, you have another hive. And resemble the hive. So important, when I say resemble the hive, you really have to put the hive back where it was in regards to the frame. So the first frame goes where you got it out of, which would be the first place, and so forth. So bees are almost like OCD. They like things going back to the way they were. So you have to do that just so everything kind of goes in harmony. So what happens when you can't find your queen? Now, if it was me when I first started, I panicked like crazy. But that you kind of get over that in time. Stay calm. I wish I had that advice when I was doing my first hive check. And you really have to look carefully. Like usually the queen, if she starts to sense light, she's going to run from that light. She's going to go on the back of the frame. If there's light on the front of the frame, all the worker bees, she has a retinue around her, which is bees that are taking care of her, and they're following her everywhere. So it's pretty easy for you not to see the queen if that's the case. Another thing too, you need to keep in mind, if you're doing a hive check and it's a virgin queen in there, good luck finding her. Virgin queens are so quick. That's kind of a sign to tell you if the queen is mated or not. A mated queen is pretty darn lazy. She's kind of strolling through that hive and she's laying eggs. She's not running, simply because her abdomen is so big. She's just full of semen and eggs. So she's not going to run around. Virgin queens, on the other hand, they go really quickly around the frame. So if you can't see your queen, you need to look for evidence of your queen. So you need to look for eggs. Now, eggs, some people find them really hard to spot, especially if you're getting kind of older and you need glasses. I use a little magnifying glass, and I get down and I see the eggs very easily with those. Also, if you frame it or if you tip it to the sun, you're able to see them a lot easier. You can see eggs quite easy if you have like a black foundation. You can see them a lot easier than it would be if it was just a yellow. You also look for the larvae and good brood pattern. So that's going to tell you if you have a healthy queen. If you have a spotty brood pattern, it kind of tells you that your queen is getting a little bit running out of sperm, and she's probably going to be superseded pretty soon. Check for queen cells. So if you can't find your queen anywhere, like I said, check for queen cells. Swarm cells are at the bottom of the frame. Supersedure cells, which is what worker bees make when they think or they know that their queen is sick or running out of sperm, they'll actually make a replacement cell, and that's called a supersedure cell, and that's in the middle of the frame. And I'll show you a picture of that in a little bit. So what happens if there's no queen? If there's no queen, you can introduce a new queen, and that works well. You do have to do it over a period of time. The hive is not going to accept a brand new queen right away. You really have to do it gradually. Keep her in this is a cage here. You can't really see it, but keep it in the cage for a little bit and just watch how the worker bees respond to her. If they are trying to take care of her, feed her through that cage, after a while, you kind of get to know whether or not they're going to accept her or not. However, if they're there and they're biting at the frame or they're being a bit aggressive, obviously you wouldn't release your queen. that would be a fantastic thing to do if you can't find your queen. However, in Newfoundland, it's really hard to do that because not a lot of people have queens for sale. So sometimes that option is not available for us. And again, this is just to make sure that the queen is going to be accepted. You could add a frame of brood, and you have to remember it has to be 1 to 2 days old brood. And that is what the worker bees will make a queen out of. So if your hive has been queenless for a period of time, they're going to start running out of eggs. So they're going to have like probably just capped brood. I mean, the worker bees can't make a queen out of that. So when they don't have any resources to make their queen, you have to give it to them. So that's part of the being the beekeeper part. You have to, because if you don't, it's going to be a drone laying colony, and eventually it will just die. So beekeepers take care of their hive, they keep them on track, and that's what we would do. So you would add a frame of brood, 2 to 3 days old, and when it's that age, the worker bees can start feeding it royal jelly, and it will become a queen. So it's important just to be mindful of that. And the other thing you can do if you can't find your queen, you can combine it with another colony and just make that colony bigger. That works. And then once they get a little bit stronger, you can separate them again. The best way to do that is the paper method. What happens is that you put the stronger hive on the bottom, put the hive that you're joining it, probably the queenless hive, on top, and you put a piece of newspaper, and then you lay that box over that. So within 2 to 3 days, you put little slits in it. 2 to 3 days, the bees are after biting through all of that newspaper. And by the time they bite through that newspaper, they're actually friendly to each other. And that's simply because the pheromone from the queen underneath is after shifting up into the second box, and the bees think they're all part of one big family. So that's the paper method. So this is fun. So we're going to talk about frames from here on. Okay, so this is a frame of drawn comb. So last week we talked about the wax glands on the worker bee. So the wax glands on the worker bee is underside of their abdomen. And what happens is that when they get of age, whether it be 8 to 12 days, their wax glands start to develop, and they start scraping off little bits of wax from their stomach. What happens then? Another bee come along, a worker bee, they pick that up, they put it in their mouth, they combine it with water, they combine it with enzymes, and then they go and they shape it to the side, to this shape of the I think it's called a hexagon of the frame. So bees make all that shape. They just pull it out. And they do that by using the wax that comes from the gland. So when you think about it, look at all the wax that it takes just to make a frame. This is why beekeepers are not very cool with giving a frame of drawn comb to a person who's trying to make candles, for example, because you know what? Drawn comb is so important to bees. It takes so much for them to make it. I would never give away drawn comb. I don't know about anybody else, but it's really super important. So basically on this frame, you can see there's nectar right here. This is nectar. I know it's nectar because it hasn't been even started covered over yet with a small wax capping. So it's not honey yet, probably almost. And as you can see, these are just empty. What I would think this is probably going to be a food frame or resource frame. It's probably towards the end of the hive, probably frame 8, 9, or 10. And this is what they're going to put all the resources in when they come into the hive with their nectar. This is cool. So I love this. This is basically telling you what you can see on the frame. So this is basically a map of the ways bees organize their frame. Again, they have OCD, so they like things all the same. So here, as you can see, I talked about all the different beautiful colors. That's pollen, that's bee bread. And this here is brood. And this is cap brood. And that's the difference. This right here is a queen cell. And remember, we talked about swarm cells. Swarm cells are on the bottom of the hive, and that's those right here. Drone brood, that's boy bee brood or babies. They're usually on the bottom of the frame simply because they're a lot bigger. So bees have to find the openings that are bigger in order to accommodate the size of the drone. So that's why they're usually on the ends, or they're sometimes even hanging off the bottom. I've had them hang. The bees actually make wax and produce like a shelf right here just for their drone brood. And this is capped honey up here. So this is basically a map. Like you can look at this when you're up in your apiary, you're pulling your frames, whether you're in the brood section of your frame, this is what you're going to see. And this is basically a Reader's Digest version, close-up of what it looks like in real life. And this is bee bread. And as I can see, this is pretty fresh stuff. As you can see, it's kind of shiny. That tells me it's fairly new. It hasn't been there for a long time. This right here, down here, hopefully you can see my marker. This here is larvae. So this is almost going to be capped. And as you can see here, this is brood at all different stages. When you see the shiny on the bottom, that's royal jelly. So it's kind of like a white-like substance. They put it on the bottom of the cell, and that's where the honeybee or the baby bee feeds. It gives it enough food to last while it's in that cell and as it's growing. So there's a pile of different ages of brood here. And up here, this is honey. This is a brown kind of section up here. This is all brood. And the reason why I picked this frame is that I really wanted you to see the different colors. So this here has probably been capped not that long. And I know this because of the color of it. As it gets older, it gets browner. And two reasons for that. One, think of all those little feet walking over the frame. So all those feet walking over the frame are just going to cause the discoloration of the wax. And as well as they age, they dry and they darken. So that's that. And this is obviously not as new. You do see some openings here. Now, I've heard a lot of different things about that, right? So it could be one, the baby bees are after hatching from that, and that's just a space where the baby bee was. I've also heard that bees do that for ventilation in order so the brood doesn't overheat. I also heard that. So who knows? This is another frame. This is a real cool one again. So this is a frame that doesn't have, like, it's frameless basically. It doesn't have any wax frame to it. So the bees are basically can develop this frame any way they want. There is some wires right here, and that helps them with the construction of the comb when it comes down. This is pretty cool to watch. And again, a lot of work and resources have to go in this for the bees to make it. You wouldn't think that that was sturdy. I tell you, I could go up to that now and shake it like this and it wouldn't move. They are real good builders for sure. And again, as you can see, drone brood, I often call that popcorn brood. It looks like popcorn. So that's all down here toward the end of the frame. This is brood here. This is all smooth. So this is all girl bees. This is all worker bees. There might be some pollen there. I can't really see it, but this is honey. Yeah, pollen here. And this is honey on top. So that's your frame. So talked a little bit about supersedure cells and swarm cells. There is a difference. Again, supersedure cells are cells that worker bees create when they get the feeling that their queen bee is, one, failing in regards to not laying as many eggs. She could be running out of sperm, that she's just old, or that she's sick. So they can pick up on that. Believe it or not, worker bees can. And the way they can pick up on that is through pheromones. So the queen gives off a mandibular pheromone, and that's what communicates through the whole hive. And that kind of tells the worker bees whether or not they are, the queen is well or not. If the queen is unwell, they're picking up on that. They're going to start doing supersedure cells in the middle of the hive. Now, swarm cells, totally different. Swarm cells, as I mentioned, is when your hive gets overpopulated. And I know I said this before, but it bugs the shit out of me. I don't know if I should have said that, but it really bothers me. Swarm cells and swarms, in my opinion, I believe that it's the beekeeper's responsibility to go into their hive once a week to have a look and see what's going on in their hive. Usually, if you go in once a week and you take close observations, you can avoid your your hive from swarming. The bees give you signs, right? Huge signs. So the big thing is that you just have to take them. So these are swarm cells, and this is at the bottom of the cell right here. So what you could do too with these swarm cells, because these are easier to kind of cut out and get at, you can actually take those swarm cells and put it in a box. That queen will hatch, and you will have a queen, a virgin queen, and she'll go off and mate. Bam, you have another colony. There are some evidence that say that, you know, swarm cells, your queen is going to be swarmy, all that kind of stuff. You know what? When you hear Bob Binney and you hear, you know, Cayman and all these people talk about it, they don't believe that. Some of them say that swarm cells make the best queen cells. So that's, again, it's all an opinion. Let's see here. These are swarm cells. So these are pretty dandy. These are huge. If you lift a frame and you're seeing this, you're past in regards to, you know, trying to really save your colony. What you need to do is probably make some splits, and that will let the bees believe like they've already swarmed, make them believe that. And you have to take all these swarm cells out of the hive for the swarming not to happen. So when swarms happen, the mother queen goes with the colony and tries to find a new home. The virgin queen hatches out of one of these cells. She stays there, but she has to go out and mate. But the bees that are left behind have all the resources of that mother colony. So they're at a head start. The swarm, unfortunately, has to start right from scratch again. I just want to give you the close-up of honey and nectar because, again, honey looks a lot different. So this is honey, you know, a real thin layer of wax goes over honey, and that basically protects it. It keeps it moist. It keeps it from, you know, not getting too much water into it or dehydrated. It keeps it at the right point. So that's this, and this is brood again, and this is nectar down here that hasn't been filled over. And again, this is nectar, almost honey, because as you can see right here, they're starting to fill it up here. Again, another honey frame, but again, you know what? It can look really different. And if you're a new beekeeper and you take a quick look, sometimes you can get confused. So honey looks different. This has aged. So this has probably been in a hive for quite some time. So as it ages, it gets darker. And that's what you're seeing here. And this is fairly new capped honey. Again, it's honey, but it's just different frames, different cappings, and probably the length of time in the frame is a lot longer on this one. The swarm, love it. So even though swarms bug me because I feel they're not being cared for properly, I do enjoy getting swarms. I do enjoy saving them. The thought for me of saving a hive of bees, it's really rewarding. I do want to say as well that a swarm has only a 23% chance of survival. So when you think about that, if a beekeeper doesn't go and rescue that swarm, wherever it may be, more than likely they are going to die, simply because it takes so long for a hive or a swarm of bees to get the resources, find a home, make it suitable, you know, get the wax going. It takes a lot of time. So that's why it's so low rate of survival, 23%. So this here is a honeybee swarm, and basically what it is, bees are naturally born swarmy. And by that, I mean the honeybees their nature is to reproduce. When I think of a swarm, I think that that's an offspring of the mother hive. So it's almost like another child. And that's the way that I look at it, because it's reproducing. So again, it happens usually in spring or early summer in Newfoundland. It usually happens in June, late June or July. Last year, I was really busy with swarms. So it can be fun. Again, causes are overcrowding and the reduced queen pheromone in the hive. So if you get a lot of bees in that box, the queen's pheromone is not able to be passed from bee to bee. So the pheromone goes by touch. So the bees touch each other, and that's what gives the queen bees pheromone all around the hive. If there's too many darn bees in there, they're not getting that pheromone. So they're going to think they're queenless, and they have to start doing something. And that's why they make swarm cells. They raise new queens. Oh, this is another fun fact. So before the swarm takes off, a couple of weeks before, again, they give you all these signs that they're going to swarm. A couple of weeks before, they put their queen on a diet. And basically what it is, they run around on the frame. They try to make her lose weight. They want to trim her down because she has to fly. And the queen doesn't really fly that great. Her wings aren't like worker bee wings. So that's why they have to slim her down. When they do slim her down, she can fly. But that's why you see swarms stopping and then lifting off and going, because sometimes they just take a break because the queen is tired. There you go. Oh, I do have to say, it's kind of a myth. So when I was in school, they were like, you know what? Swarms are friendly. Don't worry about a swarm. They're not going to hurt you. They're not defensive. They don't have any resources to be protective of. They're fine. So my first swarm, I kind of was so excited. I was pumped. And I get there. And of course, I had my suit on, didn't have my veil up, didn't have gloves on. And I went over, hi guys, hi girls. And I go over and I try to pick them up as you see on TV. Anyway, they all just kind of stung me. So that wasn't good. So I've learned since then, don't trust a swarm. Regardless, if whoever tells you they're friendly, they might not be. So they might not be because they haven't eaten in like probably 2 days, depending on when they left their mother hive. They are probably nasty because they're cold. They're nasty because they don't have a home. So there's lots of reasons they can be nasty. So my big thing, wear protection, regardless of what your thoughts are, and you'll be safe. Again, the signs of swarming, we went over this. Again, the queen cells on the bottom and overpopulated hive. Another sign, I didn't mention this, is increased drone activity. So if you pull your hive and you're seeing a bunch of drone brood, that's a sign that they're going to get ready to swarm. Now, again, that will be a lot of weeks earlier, because when you think about it, drones take 24 days in order to hatch. So it has to happen like 24 days earlier. But just be mindful of the drone and the amount of drone brood in your hive. Crowded, these peanut cells on the bottom of the frame. They slim the queen down, they make her run around, and they make her lose weight. And again, that sound again. So as I talked about in the outside check you can do, you also need to be mindful of the sound that the queen is giving off, the sound that because the queen sometimes actually pipes and toots as well. I've heard of that before. But just the noise of the colony. And I put a video on there a little while ago, kind of letting you know what that noise is all about. I sound like I'm on a rant, guys. I'm really sorry. Preventing a swarm, monitor your colony regularly for queen cells. Make sure it has proper space and adequate ventilation. Splitting your hive to make sure that they're not getting overcrowded. And a lot of people too, I know I had John Campbell ask me, how do I keep my apiary from not growing? And my response to that was, you know what, make splits. That's what you can. You make splits or nukes, and you can sell your nukes. So there's things you can do if you find your bees are building up really fast. You split and you can make some money on selling your nukes. And you know what? There's not a lot of nukes to be had in Newfoundland. So I'd say that's a good business. This is the first swarm that I actually got. So this is the ones that were nasty when I thought they were friendly. But anyway, it turned out good. I actually found the queen, popped her in the box, and they all just marched in. And that's what happens. It's important to find the queen if you can. If that's the case, it will be a lot easier. You'll be there less time because the bees smell the pheromone and they're going to just hop in that box. And if you can believe it, all of these bees here fit in that little box. Every one of them. Again, where your protection is really important. Sometimes if you have your smoker and when most of the bees are kind of like getting into their hive, you can do a little puff of smoke and that'll kind of get them in a little bit faster. Capturing a swarm. Again, if a swarm is hanging from a tree, usually what you do is just someone can or yourself can bring the box up and one quick shake and the bees will all go into the hive. So most times, unfortunately, is not that easy. I had one time way up in a tree, and I had to buy a pool cleaner with a big long handle on it, and I had to just gradually take them down and put them in. And as well with swarms, depending on where they are, I'd actually use my bee vac. And if you're going to get into catching swarms, I highly recommend a bee vac. I love mine. Bee vacs can also be used with cutouts. They're really good for cutouts. So just want to let you know that. And you have to wait for the bees to settle. Usually what I do is that once they're almost in the box, I'll do a little bit of puff of smoke. The rest of them will go in. And what I'll do then is that I'll leave a extra box and I'll put like a frame, a smelly frame. I'll probably put a frame of honey in there. And that's to get the stragglers. And then the next day or evening, I will go up and take that box just to make sure I get all the bees. This is actually, hopefully this works. Oh, here we go. So this is when the queen is in the box. Just look at this, guys. They will just march in there. This is a lovely sight. And if you're catching a swarm, this is what you want to see. It's very cool. It's amazing, actually. This never gets old for me. They know where their mama is. There we go. And that's it. So that's all for today. I hope I didn't go overboard with the swarms, except I feel very strong about that and how beekeepers should care for their bees. Yeah, so I didn't know if anyone had any questions. If you can talk, please talk to me because I'm here by myself. However, if you want to just put it in the comments, you can do that as well, and I can read them out. I'll just wait a little bit in case somebody has some questions. No questions. Thanks, Slade. You're a good fella. Okay, if you don't have any questions, I would suggest if you have one, because this always happens to me, as soon as you kind of hang up the call, you think, oh, I should ask this. You can message me. And I will reach out to you and I'll kind of help you along and let you understand this a little bit better. I also was thinking about having another session. There's so much to beekeeping. You know what? You could have these weekly and you could learn so much from them. I haven't even touched on the different diseases that bees can have. I haven't touched on like the different seasons and what you have to do each season, like fall, winter, summer, what you need to do with your beehives during those times. So I am just going to lay that out there. And if people are interested, just drop me a line and I'll certainly just get something together and I can do another one. I really don't mind. I love this, actually. This is really good. So I have a question, what time of year is the best time to start a nuke? So nukes, usually with a nuke, you're going to be a little bit later getting them. And that's, well, in Newfoundland for sure. So I would think maybe early June, mid-June, that's when you can hopefully expect that your nuke will be available. And otherwise, I mean, you can get a nuke any time of the year past that. But that's probably the earliest that you're going to get it. And in Newfoundland, I think that's a really good date simply because our weather here is horrible. And even in June, you can get really cold weather. And when you think about it, there's not a lot of bees there to keep that box at a normal temperature that it needs to be, like 37 degrees. So that's why I think it's important to, you know, the later, even though I know you want your bees, it would be best for the bees. So, but yeah, so that's my opinion on that. And again, I just want to bawl and scream this is that when you get your nuke, wherever you're getting your nuke, just please ask the right questions. So you need to ask, is this an overwinterized queen? Is this a new queen? Make sure you have, I say 5 frames. Some people are 4. I say deep. Some people say mediums. You know, when you're thinking about mediums, you're getting half your bees, you're getting half the brood. It's going to take them much longer to build up. So I'm a big fan of a nuke being deep, like bigger frames and having 5. You also want to make sure and ask that you have enough resources in there. It needs to be like probably 2.5 frames of honey. Make sure there's pollen in there. And, just ask your questions. And if this person is a very professional person, they're not going to get defensive when you ask these questions. I even suggested in one of my posts that, maybe even if you can go, a week early and have a look at your nuke before it actually comes home with you, just to make sure you have a good queen. And that's just my opinion. I've just heard a lot of horror stories, and I wouldn't want anybody new to kind of relive that. So just be really careful when you get your nuke. Well, guys, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Again, if you're interested in having another one, I really don't mind. I enjoy it, actually. I don't mind putting another one off. So just drop me a line and we'll hopefully meet again. Okay, guys, take care. Bye.